The doorbell rang at 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, 3 years after my father told me to choose between his approval and my sister's life. I chose her. Now, standing on my porch in the rain were the two people who swore they'd never forgive me. My name is Eddie Scott, and for 3 years I've lived in a town that whispers about the son who destroyed his family's reputation. The funny thing about being the town scandal is that people stop seeing you as human. You become a story they tell at dinner parties, a cautionary tale mothers use when their daughters start dating the wrong guy. Remember the Scott boy? Threw away his whole future for his sister's mistake. They say it like I had a choice. They say it like love is something you can afford to be practical about. I was sitting on my couch when the doorbell rang, half watching some crime show I'd seen twice before, the kind of quiet Tuesday night that used to bore me before I learned to appreciate boring. Mia, my almost 3-year-old niece, had finally gone down after fighting sleep for an hour, clutching her stuffed rabbit and making me promise 3 times that I'd be there when she woke up. My sister Ivy was in her room, probably scrolling through her phone or reading one of those parenting blogs she lived on lately. Our apartment was finally peaceful. Then the doorbell rang. Nobody visits us at 9:47 p.m. Nobody visits us at all, really, except the pizza guy and Mrs. Chen from down the hall, who sometimes brings us leftover dumplings because she says we look too skinny. I froze on the couch, remote still in my hand, that crime show detective frozen mid-sentence on the screen. The doorbell rang again, longer this time, more insistent. I got up slowly, my heart doing something weird in my chest that I didn't want to name yet. Through the peephole, the one with the crack running through it that splits everything into 2 slightly off-center images, I saw them. David and Sandra Scott, my parents. Drenched from the rain I hadn't even noticed when it started. My father's usually perfect hair plastered to his forehead. My mother's makeup running in the dark streaks down her face. They looked old. That was the first thing that hit me. 3 years isn't supposed to age people like that, but my father's shoulders curved forward in a way I'd never seen, and my mother's hands were shaking as she reached up to knock again. My hand went to the doorknob before my brain caught up. Wait, 3 years? 3 years of silence so complete it felt like we'd died. 3 years of birthday cards I sent to their address that came back unopened. 3 years of my sister crying herself to sleep wondering what she did that was so unforgivable. 3 years of explaining to a toddler why she didn't have grandparents like the other kids at daycare. My fingers gripped the doorknob so hard my knuckles went white. Down the hall, I heard Ivy's door creak open. "Eddie?" Her voice was soft, careful. "Who is it?" Through the peephole, my mother knocked again. Softer this time, not demanding, almost pleading. My father's lips moved. I couldn't hear him through the door, but I could read the shape of the words. "Please, son. Son." He called me son. The man who told me I wasn't his family anymore if I walked out that door with Ivy. The man who made the whole town choose between their reputation and their daughter's life, and chose reputation without blinking. "Eddie?" Ivy's voice came closer. "Is someone there?" My hand was still on that doorknob. Behind me, my sister, the one who'd been in my house for 4 months while pregnant, who worked double shifts at the daycare to help pay rent, who'd built a whole life from the ashes of the one our parents burned down, waited for my answer. Outside, my parents stood in the rain. I didn't know yet that opening that door would force me to choose all over again. I didn't know that everything I thought I'd settled 3 years ago was about to explode into questions I had no answers for. All I knew was that my hand was turning the doorknob, and there was no going back. But before I could face whoever was on the other side, my brain did what it always does when I'm cornered. It dragged me straight back to the night this all started, the night my father said words that blew our family apart. 3 years earlier, I'd walked through a different door with my sister's hand gripping mine so tight, I lost feeling in my fingers. It was the front door of the house I grew up in, the place where our name still meant everything, until that night. It was a Thursday evening in April when everything ended. The kind of spring night where the air smells like cut grass and new leaves, where families sit on their porches and wave at neighbors walking dogs. Normal, safe, the kind of night that tricks you into thinking nothing bad can happen. Ivy had called me that morning, voice cracking through the phone. I need to tell them. I can't hide it anymore. 5 months pregnant, and our parents still didn't know. 5 months of baggy sweaters and avoiding family dinners and her panic getting louder every day. I'll go with you, I'd said. We'll tell them together. Now, walking up the stone path to the house I grew up in, I was trying to remember why I thought that would make a difference. The Scott family home sat at the end of Maple Street like a showroom display. White paint that never chipped, shutters that matched perfectly. Flower beds my mother obsessed over because Mrs. Henderson 3 doors down had won Best Garden 2 years running, and Sandra Scott doesn't lose at anything. The porch light was on. It was always on, warm and welcoming, the kind of house that looked like it belonged in a commercial about family values. We stood at that door for 10 seconds that felt like an hour. Maybe they'll understand, Ivy whispered. She was 19 years old, small and scared in her oversized cardigan that barely hid the curve of her stomach. I wanted to believe that the people who'd raised us, who'd taught us Sunday school verses about forgiveness and compassion, would find some of that for their own daughter. I knocked. My father opened the door in his usual Thursday outfit, khakis and a button-down shirt even at home, because David Scott believed in maintaining standards. His smile dropped the second he saw Ivy's face. "We need to talk," I said. The living room felt smaller than I remembered. My mother sat in her usual chair by the window, the one that gave her a perfect view of the street so she could see who drove by. Everything in that room was exactly where it had always been. Decorative pillows lined up perfectly. Not a magazine out of place. Family photos arranged by year on the mantle. All of them stopped at my high school graduation. Ivy wasn't in any of them yet. She was supposed to be added later, after she did something worth photographing. She never got the chance. Ivy sat on the couch, hands folded in her lap. I stayed standing beside her. She needed to say it herself, needed that dignity, even if I wanted to scream it at them just to get it over with. "Mom, Dad." Her voice shook. "I'm pregnant." The silence that followed wasn't the shocked kind. It was the kind that sharpens into something that cuts. My mother's face went white, then red. My father stood completely still, his jaw working like he was chewing words too awful to let out. "Where is he?" Sandra finally said. Not "are you okay?" or "how far along?" or any of the 100 other questions a mother might ask. "Where's the boy who did this?" "Carlos left," Ivy whispered. "He's gone. I can't find him." "Of course he left." My father's voice was flat, cold. "Because boys like that always do, and girls stupid enough to..." "Don't." I stepped forward. "Don't finish that sentence." David's eyes snapped to me. "You knew? She told me yesterday. And you didn't think we deserved to know our daughter was ruining her life?" She's not ruining anything, I said. She made a mistake. She needs help. My mother stood up, smoothing her skirt with shaking hands. Do you understand what this does to us? To this family? Everyone will know. The church will know. The Hendersons, the Pratts, everyone on this street. Who cares? My voice came out louder than I meant it. Who cares what they think? We do, my father said. Each word landed like a hammer. We've spent 30 years building a name in this town. We cannot throw that away because she couldn't keep her legs closed. Ivy made a sound like something is breaking. Dad turned to stare at the front window, as if the neighbors might somehow already be pressed to the glass. Do you have any idea what this will do to us? He said. To this street? To my reputation at the firm? To your mother's standing at church? I stepped forward. It's not about your reputation, Dad. It's about your daughter. He rounded on me. Stay out of this, Eddie. No, I said. I drove her here. She's terrified. She needs her parents. We raised you better than this, Mom said to Ivy, ignoring me. We gave you everything. We moved into this neighborhood so you'd have opportunities. We sacrificed for you, and you repay us by becoming that girl, the one people whisper about at barbecues? They already whisper, Ivy said quietly. You just don't hear it. Dad's voice went cold. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to make an appointment. You're going to fix this, and we are never going to speak of it again. You will finish school, you will get a respectable job, and nobody on Maple Street will ever know. Ivy's hand tightened on her backpack strap. I'm not fixing my child, she said. Mom stood up so fast, the chair scraped the hardwood. You don't get to bring a mistake into this house, she snapped. Not after everything we've built. Not in this neighborhood. Do you understand how fast gossip spreads here? Mrs. Henderson already thinks we're too soft on you. Ivy laughed once, a broken sound. So that's it. You care more about what Mrs. Henderson says over her hedge than about your own grandchild. Dad's eyes hardened. Do not use that word, he said. I don't have a grandchild. You have a problem you refuse to solve. I stepped between them. If she can't stay here, I said, she can stay with me. We'll figure it out. But you don't get to throw her out like trash. Dad pointed at the door, fingers shaking with fury. If she walks out that door with you, she doesn't come back. Not with that situation. We will not have our home turned into a cautionary tale for the entire block. Mom's voice dropped to a deadly calm. You want to keep that baby? She said. Do it somewhere else. You're an adult. You make your own mess. You live with it. But you will not drag this family name through the mud. Ivy's breath hitched, but she lifted her chin. You keep the name, she said. I'll keep my daughter. I looked at Dad, waiting for him to soften, to take it back, to offer anything that sounded like love. He didn't move. Last chance, he said. You choose us, or you choose this mistake. Ivy stepped back toward me instead. That's what I thought, Dad said. You're not my daughter anymore. Mom didn't stop him. She turned her face away like she couldn't bear to look at us. We left. No bags but the one on Ivy's shoulder. No promises of phone calls. Just the front door closing behind us with a soft click that sounded a lot like a lock sliding into place. As we walked down the perfect front steps, I glanced back at the Maple Street house. The sun hit the white trim just right. It looked like something out of a real estate brochure, flawless, polished, untouchable. They chose the house, Ivy said, voice flat. They chose the neighbors. They chose what people think. Yeah, I said. They did. My apartment wasn't built for two people. That first night, after I carried Ivy's suitcase up 3 flights of stairs because the elevator was broken again, we stood in my living room and reality hit both of us at once. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a couch that had seen better days, and a kitchen so small you couldn't open the fridge and the oven at the same time. Ivy looked around, then down at her stomach, then at me. I'm sorry, she whispered. I wanted to tell her to stop apologizing. She'd apologize another 1,000 times before she finally believed me when I said she had nothing to be sorry for. Instead, I handed her my bedroom key. You take the bed. I'll take the couch. Eddie, no. You're pregnant. I'm taking the couch. That argument lasted 3 days before she finally gave up. The first month was about survival, not comfort. I worked my regular IT job at Brennan Solutions, making $42,000 a year, which sounds fine until you're suddenly feeding 2 people and paying for prenatal vitamins and doctor visits that cost more than my monthly grocery budget used to. Ivy couldn't work. Morning sickness that lasted all day, exhaustion that hit her like a truck by 2 p.m., and the stress that kept her up crying most nights. I sold my car the second week. It was a 2015 Honda with a dent in the passenger door and a radio that only worked on AM stations. But it was paid off, and a dealer gave me $3,000 cash. We needed that money more than I needed wheels. The bus ran past my office anyway. The town noticed. Of course they noticed. In a place where everyone knows everyone, you can't hide a scandal like ours. I'd see former neighbors at the grocery store and watch their eyes slide past me like I was invisible. At church, the one time I tried going back, people who'd known me since I was 10 suddenly had somewhere else to be when I walked up. Mrs. Patterson, who used to bring us cookies every Christmas, crossed the street when she saw Ivy and me coming. The worst part wasn't the judgment. It was watching Ivy shrink under it. She'd gone from a girl who laughed loud and hugged strangers' kids at the daycare, where she volunteered, to someone who kept her head down and apologized for taking up space in the cereal aisle. They all think I'm trash, she said one night, folded up on my couch with her hands on her stomach. Then they're idiots. You lost everything because of me. Our family, I didn't lose anything that mattered. I sat down next to her. They lost us. There's a difference. She didn't believe me. Not yet. But I kept saying it anyway. Money became a math problem I solved every single day. Rent was $1,200. Utilities ran another $150. Groceries for 2, plus Ivy's special food requests because the baby decided she could only eat bland carbs without getting sick, added up fast. Doctor visits cost $300 a pop even with my insurance. By week 3, my savings account was down to $800. I picked up freelance work fixing computers for people I found through Craigslist. Late nights hunched over someone's laptop cleaning viruses and reinstalling operating systems while Ivy slept in the other room. I'd make $50 here, $75 there. It added up slowly. Ivy found strength in small ways. Week 4, she started applying to daycares that might hire someone pregnant. Most never called back. One lady told her straight up, "We can't have you around the children in your condition. Parents wouldn't like it." She cried in the bathroom for 20 minutes after that call. Then she got up, washed her face, and applied to 5 more places. One finally said yes, a small center on the east side of town run by a woman named Angela who didn't care about gossip. Part-time, minimum wage, but Ivy could work until she was too pregnant to chase toddlers around. She came home that day with the first real smile I'd seen in a month. "We're going to be okay," she said, standing in our tiny kitchen that could barely fit us both. I wanted to believe her. I was too busy calculating how we'd afford the hospital bill to let myself hope just yet, but I nodded anyway. "Yeah, we are." 4 months after my parents threw us out, Ivy went into labor at 2 in the morning on a Wednesday in September. I woke up to her shaking my shoulder, her face pale in the darkness. "Eddie, something's wrong. I think..." She doubled over, gripping the back of the couch where I'd been sleeping. I've never gotten dressed faster in my life. The hospital was 30 minutes away, the closest one that took our insurance. I borrowed my coworker's car, promising him I'd have it back by morning, and drove through empty streets with Ivy breathing through contractions in the passenger seat. Every time she cried out, my hands gripped the steering wheel tighter. "You're doing great," I kept saying, even though I had no idea if that was true. What did I know about labor? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. 14 hours. That's how long it took. 14 hours of me sitting in an uncomfortable chair in a hospital room that smelled like disinfectant and fear, holding my sister's hand while she screamed and cried and begged for it to be over. The nurses were kind but distant, doing their jobs efficiently while I tried to figure out how to be whatever Ivy needed me to be. At 4:17 p.m., Mia Grace Shelton came into the world. 7 pounds, 6 ounces, dark hair like Ivy's. Tiny fists that punched the air like she was already mad at being born. When the nurse placed her in Ivy's arms, my sister looked down at her daughter and something in her face changed. All the fear, all the shame, all the weight she'd been carrying. It didn't disappear, but it shifted into something else. Purpose. "Mia," Ivy whispered. "Her name is Mia." They let me hold her next. I'd never held a baby before. She was so small I was terrified I'd break her. But the nurse just laughed and showed me how to support her head. Mia opened her eyes, dark gray, unfocused, and stared up at me like she was trying to figure out who I was. I stared back and felt something crack open in my chest. I would die for this child. I knew it instantly, completely, the way you know your own name. This tiny human who'd been alive for 10 minutes had just rearranged my entire world without even trying. The hospital bill arrived 3 weeks later, $11,467, even with insurance. I sat at my kitchen table staring at that number until the letters blurred. My savings account had $300 left. My credit card was already maxed from buying the crib and diapers and all the things babies need that no one tells you about until you're standing in the store with a list that never ends. The hospital set me up on a payment plan for part of it, and I put the rest on a high-interest credit card I'd kept for emergencies. Between the monthly payment and the card bill, a chunk of every paycheck vanished before I even saw it. The first 3 months with a newborn were the hardest thing I've ever done, and I wasn't even the one getting up every 2 hours to feed her. Ivy handled most of it, but Mia cried. God, she cried, screaming that shook the walls at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m. My downstairs neighbor complained twice before I bought him noise-canceling headphones as an apology. The following months wasn't easy. Formulas cost a fortune. Diapers cost more. Doctor visits for checkups and vaccines added up. I was working 50 hours in a week between my day job and freelance work, running on 4 hours of sleep, living off ramen and coffee. But then Mia would smile at me, or grab my finger with her whole hand, or fall asleep on my chest while I worked on my laptop. her tiny body rising and falling with each breath. Worth it. Every dollar, every sleepless night, every sacrifice, worth it. The hardest part was the silence from Maple Street. Not one phone call, not one card, not even a "is the baby healthy?" through a mutual friend. Nothing. My parents had a granddaughter, and they'd chosen to never know her. Ivy tried calling once, 2 months after Mia was born. The phone rang 4 times. My mother picked up. 3 seconds of silence, then the click of the line going dead. Ivy didn't try again. Mia's first word, at 11 months old, was AD, close enough to Eddie that we both knew what she meant. Ivy cried happy tears. I did too, though I'd never admit it. Almost 3 years after the night my parents threw us out, it went by in a blur of birthday parties at the apartment, Halloween costumes bought on clearance, and Christmas mornings where Mia opened presents I'd saved for months to afford. Years of watching my niece grow from a screaming bundle of needs into a tiny person with opinions and jokes and a laugh that sounded like bells. Years of my life on pause while everyone else moved forward. I got offered a promotion at work when Mia was about 18 months old, roughly 2 years after that night on Maple Street. Senior IT manager. $58,000 a year, full benefits, company car. The catch? I'd have to relocate to Denver. 3-year contract, minimum. I turned it down the same day. My boss looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Scott, opportunities like this don't come twice. I know. Is it the money? We can negotiate. It's not the money. He never asked again. 2 months later, they hired someone else. A guy fresh out of college who didn't have a sister and niece depending on him for everything. I watched him get my promotion, my office, my future, and told myself it didn't matter. Most days I believed it. Our apartment stayed cramped, but it stopped feeling temporary and started feeling like home. Mia's drawings covered the fridge. Her toy box sat in the corner of the living room where my bookshelf used to be. The couch I slept on every night had a permanent dent shaped like my body. Ivy blossomed in ways I didn't expect. The scared girl who apologized for breathing turned into a woman who knew what she wanted. She got promoted to assistant director at the daycare, managing schedules and helping train new staff. She'd come home tired but satisfied, talking about the kids she worked with, the parents she helped, the difference she was making. I think I want to go back to school and get a degree, she told me one night after Mia went to bed. Do it. I can't afford it, she said. I told her, we'll figure it out. She enrolled in online classes that semester. I watched her stay up late studying after putting Mia down, determination written all over her face. She pulled a 3.8 GPA her first year. Mia grew into a kid who called me Daddy Eddie and didn't understand why that made Ivy's eyes get wet sometimes. She had Ivy's dark curls and stubbornness, but she got her laugh from somewhere else entirely. Loud and sudden and impossible to fake. She loved dinosaurs and refused to wear anything that wasn't purple. She told everyone at daycare that her uncle was the strongest man in the world because I could carry her on my shoulders without getting tired. The town's judgment never really stopped, but it got quieter. People still crossed the street sometimes. Church members still avoided us. But Mrs. Chen from down the hall became like family, teaching Mia to make dumplings and watching her on the rare occasions both Ivy and I had to work late. A few co-workers became friends, the kind who didn't ask questions about my family situation and just invited us to cookouts where Mia could play with their kids. We built a life from scraps, and somehow it held together. But the silence from Maple Street never broke. 3 years without a single word. No birthday cards for Mia, No Christmas presents. No acknowledgement that their granddaughter existed. I drove past their house sometimes on my way to work. The bus route went right down their street, and everything looked exactly the same. Perfect lawn, perfect paint, perfect emptiness. I wondered sometimes if they ever thought about us. If my mother ever walked past Ivy's old bedroom and felt something missing. If my father ever woke up at night and questioned whether his pride was worth losing his daughter. I never got an answer to those questions. Until that Tuesday night 3 years later, when my doorbell rang and everything changed. But I didn't know that yet. All I knew was that Ivy had been acting strange lately, checking her phone more often, getting quiet when I asked if everything was okay, jumping whenever a car pulled into our parking lot. Just stressed about finals, she'd said. I believed her. I shouldn't have. My mind didn't go there that she has been hiding something. Before we reveal who's about to turn their world upside down, if you're invested in this story, hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. Drop your city in the comments. We love seeing where our listeners are tuning in from. Now, back to the chaos. A few months before that Tuesday night, when the doorbell would change everything, another blast from our past showed up. Ivy's phone buzzed on the counter. She grabbed it so fast she knocked over her coffee mug, sending brown liquid spreading across the table. She didn't even notice, just stared at her screen like she'd seen a ghost. "What's wrong?" I asked. She looked up at me, face completely white. "It's Carlos." The spatula in my hand clattered into the sink. Carlos Shelton. The man who'd gotten my sister pregnant and disappeared before she started showing. The man whose last known location was somewhere in Nevada 2 years ago. The man whose name we didn't say in this apartment because it made Ivy shut down for hours. What does he want? Ivy's hands shook as she held out her phone. I read the message. "Ivy, it's Carlos. I know I have no right to contact you, but I'm back in town and I need to see her. I need to see my daughter. Please." The rage that shot through me was so intense I had to grip the counter to keep from throwing something. He needs? Eddie. He abandoned you. He left you pregnant and alone, and now he needs something? My voice came out louder than I meant. In the living room, Mia looked up from her cartoons, concerned. Ivy's eyes filled with tears. I know all of that. But he's her father. I'm her father. I've been her father for 3 years while he was off doing God knows what. You're her uncle, Ivy said quietly. And I love you for everything you've done. But he has rights. He has nothing, I was shouting now. He gave up his rights when he blocked your number and moved states. Mia started crying. Ivy rushed to comfort her while I stood in the kitchen, chest heaving, trying to remember how to breathe. This couldn't be happening. Not now. Not after we'd finally found our footing. Carlos showed up at the daycare 3 days later. Ivy called me at work, voice shaking. He's here, he's outside. Eddie, you need to see this. I left in the middle of a meeting, drove the borrowed car I'd been using since I sold mine, and got there in 15 minutes. I found Carlos standing in the parking lot next to a brand new Lexus, wearing clothes that probably cost more than my monthly rent. He looked different, filled out, confidence, like someone who'd figured out life while the rest of us struggled through it. Eddie, he extended his hand. It's been a long time. I didn't shake it. What do you want? I said, I want to meet my daughter. I want to explain. He paused, looking at Ivy standing in the daycare doorway with her arms crossed. I want to make things right. Make things right? I stepped closer. You've been gone for 2.5 years. Where were you when Ivy was throwing up every morning? Where were you when she went into labor? Where were you when Mia got sick and we couldn't afford the hospital bill? Nevada. His voice was steady, calm, like he'd practiced this. I was in Nevada working construction. Then I got into real estate development. I flipped my first property 18 months ago. Now I own a development company. I'm worth... He stopped himself. I'm doing well. Good for you. I turned to leave. I can help, he said quickly. Financially. I know you've been supporting them. I know it's been hard. Let me help. We don't need your money, I replied, Eddie. Ivy's voice cut through. She walked over, jaw set in that stubborn way that meant she'd made a decision I wouldn't like. Let him talk. Over the next hour, sitting in a coffee shop while Ivy's co-worker watched Mia at the daycare, Carlos told us everything. The panic when he found out about the pregnancy, the fear that he couldn't provide, the stupid decision to run instead of face it, the years of guilt, the success that came too late. The media searches he'd done monthly, trying to find out if Ivy was okay, if the baby was okay, too scared to reach out. I want to be in her life, he said finally. I want to be her father. Ivy looked at me, then back at Carlos. I need time to think. But I could already see it in her eyes. She was going to let him in, and I was going to lose them. Carlos didn't waste time. 2 weeks after that first meeting, he showed up at our apartment with a manila folder and a smile that probably closed business deals worth millions. Can I come in? Ivy nodded. I didn't, but it wasn't my call anymore. He sat on the couch that doubled as my bed and opened the folder on our coffee table, the one I'd found on the curb 3 years ago and sanded down myself. Inside were documents, legal papers with numbers that made my stomach drop. I've had my lawyer draw up a proposal, Carlos said, looking between Ivy and me. I want to do this right. Formally. The first document was a trust fund. $500,000 for Mia, locked until she turned 18. For college, emergencies, whatever she needed. The second was a property deed, a house in Henderson, Nevada, 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, bought and paid for, ready to transfer to Ivy's name. The third was a custody agreement, joint custody. Carlos wanted to be part of Mia's life, legally and permanently. Ivy's hands trembled as she picked up each paper, reading words that probably meant freedom from every financial fear she'd carried for almost 3 years. I felt like I was drowning. You'd moved to Nevada? I asked Ivy, not Carlos. I needed to hear her say it. I don't know, she whispered. This is a lot. It's everything you deserve, Carlos said smoothly. A fresh start. Security. Mia would have her own room, her own yard, great schools, everything you couldn't give her here. The words hit like punches. Everything you couldn't give her here. Everything I couldn't give her, he meant. My cramped apartment, my second-hand furniture, my paycheck-to-paycheck existence that meant Mia's birthday presents came from clearance racks, and her clothes were hand-me-downs from daycare kids who'd outgrown them. And what about Eddie? Ivy asked, her voice stronger now. He's been raising Mia with me. He's her uncle, Carlos finished, and he can visit anytime. I'm not trying to cut anyone out. I'm trying to give my daughter the life she deserves. Over the next 3 weeks, Carlos made good on every promise. He took Mia to the aquarium, an hour away, the kind of trip I'd always said we'd take someday when money wasn't tight. He bought her a tablet loaded with educational games. He showed up at the daycare with lunch for Ivy. Nice restaurants I'd never been able to afford. And Mia loved him. That was the part that killed me. Watching my niece, the girl who called me Daddy Eddie, who made me read the same dinosaur book 12 times a night, light up when Carlos walked in the room. She'd run to him shouting, "Carlos!" with the same excitement she used to save just for me. "Uncle Eddie, Carlos has a pool," she told me one night, bouncing on my lap. "A real pool. He said I can swim in it every day." "That's great, sweetheart," I said, my voice hollow. Ivy pulled me aside after putting Mia to bed. We stood in the kitchen, the place where we'd had 1,000 conversations about money and struggle and making it work. "I need to ask you something," she said, "and I need you to be honest." I waited. What if she deserves better than this? Ivy gestured around the apartment. Better than hand-me-downs and shared bedrooms and worrying every month if we can pay rent? We've done fine. We've survived, Eddie. That's not the same as thriving. Her eyes filled with tears. Carlos can give her everything. Private schools, college paid for, a father who's actually her father, not just the guy who's been here. I finished. Got it. That's not what I meant. But it's true. I leaned against the counter, suddenly exhausted. I thought love was enough. I thought being there every day, every night, every moment she needed someone, I thought that mattered more than money. It does matter, Ivy said. But love doesn't pay for college. Love doesn't give her opportunities. 3 days later, Ivy agreed to try it. 6 months in Nevada. If it worked, she'd make it permanent. I helped her pack, folding Mia's purple shirts and her dinosaur pajamas, putting them in new suitcases Carlos had bought because ours were held together with duct tape. Mia asked me 5 times if I was coming too. I told her no 5 times, and each time felt like losing her all over again. Moving day was a Saturday in June. Carlos showed up at 8 a.m. with professional movers, guys in matching uniforms who handled our secondhand furniture like it was worth something. They packed up Ivy's bedroom in 45 minutes. Mia's toys and clothes went into labeled boxes. Everything my sister and niece owned fit into a truck with room to spare. Mia was confused. She kept asking why we were putting her stuff in boxes, why the men were taking her bed. Ivy tried to explain, "We're going on an adventure, sweetie." But 3-year-olds don't understand permanent moves. They just know something's wrong when adults start crying while they pack. I stayed out of the way mostly. Leaned against the kitchen counter, drinking coffee that had gone cold, watching strangers take apart the life we'd built piece by piece. Carlos kept trying to make conversation, talking about the drive, about getting Mia enrolled in a good preschool in Henderson, about how grateful he was that we were giving this a chance. I nodded at appropriate times and said nothing. By noon, the truck was loaded. Ivy stood in the middle of the empty living room, emptier now than it had been in 3 years. Just my couch, my coffee table, the TV I'd bought when Mia was 6 months old. "This is just a trial," she said. 6 months. If it doesn't work, I know. "You could visit," Carlos said, "any time." She hugged me. I hugged her back, feeling her shake against my chest. "I'll never forget what you did for us," she whispered. "No matter what happens. You saved our lives, Eddie." I couldn't speak. If I opened my mouth, I'd beg her to stay. Mia came running over, purple backpack bouncing on her shoulders. "Daddy Eddie, you coming now?" I knelt down to her level. Her little face was so trusting, so excited about this adventure she didn't understand. "Not this time, sweetheart." Her smile faltered. But why? Because Uncle Eddie has to work, Ivy said quickly. But you'll talk to him on video calls every day. Right, Eddie? Every single day, I promised. Mia thought about this. Then she threw her arms around my neck and squeezed with all the strength in her tiny body. I love you, Daddy Eddie. I love you too, Mia. So much. Carlos loaded them into his Lexus. Mia waved from the back window, still smiling, still thinking this was temporary. The truck pulled out first, then Carlos's car. Then they were gone. I stood in the parking lot for 20 minutes after they disappeared. The apartment was too quiet. I'd forgotten what silence sounded like without Mia's cartoons or Ivy's music or the constant noise of life happening around me. I sat on the couch and stared at the spot where Mia's toy box used to be. My phone buzzed. A text from Ivy. Made it to the highway. Mia's already asking when she can call you. Over the next 2 weeks, they sent pictures. The new house, huge, beautiful, everything I could never provide. Mia's bedroom with its purple walls and new furniture. The backyard with its pool. Family dinners with Carlos making Mia laugh. Each photo felt like losing them all over again. I couldn't eat. Missed 3 days of work. Sat in the dark, scrolling through old pictures of Mia's first steps, her first birthday, every moment I'd been there for that Carlos had missed, but now got to claim. Then, about 6 weeks after they left, my phone rang after they left. My phone rang, not a text, a call. Ivy's name on the screen. Can we talk? Her voice sounded strange, tight. Alone? What's wrong? Not on the phone. I'll call you tonight after Mia goes to sleep. She hung up before I could ask more questions. That night at 9 p.m., she called again. I could hear her moving around, a door closing, footsteps. I made a mistake, she said. No greeting, just that. My heart stopped. What happened? Carlos is not who I thought. The money, the house, all of it, it comes with strings. He monitors my phone, questions where I go. Got angry when I said I wanted to keep working. Her voice cracked. He said I don't need to work anymore because he provides everything, like I'm something he owns now. Come home. I said, it's not that simple. Legally, he has rights now. The custody agreement. Come home, Ivy. We'll figure it out. She went silence. Then Saeed. I miss our apartment. I miss you. Mia cries for you every night. She said, then come home. The next afternoon, a taxi pulled up in front of my building. I was at the window before the driver even turned the engine off. Ivy stepped out first, hair pulled back, eyes tired but set. Mia followed, clutching her stuffed rabbit, her backpack hanging off one shoulder. When I opened the door, they both rushed me at once. Mia wrapped herself around my leg, talking fast about the plane and the new house and how she didn't like it there. Ivy just held on to me and didn't let go for a long time. That night, the apartment felt full again. 2 suitcases in the hallway. Mia's toy box back in its corner. Ivy asleep in my old room with her daughter tucked in beside her. Carlos did not take it well. Within a week of Ivy coming home, his lawyer sent a letter threatening to file for full custody if she didn't return to Nevada. Ivy hired a local attorney using what little savings we had left, and a month later we were sitting in family court explaining 3 years of his absence to a judge. In the end, the judge wasn't impressed by a man who vanished during the pregnancy and only showed up once he had money. Carlos was granted supervised visits twice a month and ordered to pay child support. No relocation, no taking Mia away. The doorbell rang again, yanking me out of the memories. 3 years of anger and sacrifice crashed into one breath as I finally turned the knob and opened the door. My father stood there looking 10 years older than the last time I'd seen him. His shoulders curved forward, his hair more gray than brown now. My mother's makeup ran in dark streaks down her face from the rain I hadn't even heard starting. This was the same Tuesday night, 9:47 p.m., the exact date my family had blown apart 3 years earlier. Eddie. My father's voice cracked on my name. Please, we need to talk. Every cell in my body screamed to slam the door. 3 years of silence. 3 years of treating me and their daughter like we'd died. 3 years of pretending their granddaughter didn't exist. You need to leave, I said. I know we don't deserve your time, but please. 5 minutes, my mother said. She was shaking, from cold or fear, I couldn't tell. You've got 10 seconds. Talk. My father's jaw worked like he was chewing broken glass. The man who'd always had perfect words, perfect posture, perfect control, he looked shattered. We were wrong. Each word came out like it hurt. About Ivy, about you, about everything. That's great. You figured that out 3 years too late. My father swallowed hard. Your mother is sick, he said. It's bad. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, my mother added, her voice barely above a whisper. The treatments aren't working. The doctors gave me months, maybe less. The hallway tilted. I gripped the doorframe to keep my balance. I'm sorry, I heard myself say. And I was. Despite everything, she was still my mother. But I don't know what you want me to do. I want to see my daughter, she said. I want to meet my granddaughter. Her voice broke completely. I want to try to fix what we did before I die. You don't get to just show up because you're scared of dying, I said. You threw her out so you wouldn't have to deal with the scandal. Now you're here because you can't live with what you did. That's not about us. That's about you. Dad flinched like I'd hit him. It's not just that, he said quietly. The treatments, they cost more than we ever expected. The insurance fought us on everything. We refinanced the house twice. We maxed every line of credit. We're drowning, Eddie. I stayed silent. The bank sent a final notice last week, he continued. If we don't catch up, they'll start foreclosure on Maple Street. We're going to lose it. Mom's shoulders shook. That house was all we ever cared about, she said. We chose it over you, over Ivy, over Mia, and now it's slipping away anyway. People talk, Dad added, almost to himself. We thought we were protecting our reputation when we threw Ivy out. But once the diagnosis got around and your aunt opened her mouth, the truth spread. Church stopped calling. The neighbors cross the street when they see us. Mrs. Henderson told someone she finally understood why the kids never come home. He looked up at me, eyes raw. All that pretending, all that judgment, and now we're the ones everyone whispers about. Good, I said. You earned that. He reached into his jacket. I flinched before I could stop myself and pulled out an envelope. He held it out with shaking hands. These are the preliminary papers, he said. We talked to a lawyer. If we transfer the deed before the bank finishes the process, they can't take the house. It would go to Ivy, and there's a college account we managed to keep separate from the medical mess. We want it in Mia's name. We want to do at least one thing right before it's all gone. I didn't take the envelope. You don't get to buy your way back into this family, I said. If that house ever has our names on the deed, it's not payment for forgiveness. It's restitution, bare minimum. And it still won't make you grandparents again. Ivy moved closer, arms crossed over her chest. I hadn't realized she'd stepped up behind me until she spoke. "You told me to get out and never come back," she said. "You made it very clear I was dead to you. The night you kicked me out, you chose that house and the people on Maple Street over your own kid. Now those same people won't even look at you, and suddenly we're worth the drive." Mom winced. Dad stared at the floor. "So here's how this works," Ivy said. "You sign everything over with a lawyer present. No conditions, no promises, no strings. The house, the account. You don't get to dictate what we do with it or what kind of family we are." She took the envelope from Dad's hand without looking at it. "Then we'll decide if you meet Mia," she finished. "Not the other way around." 2 days later, we sat across from them in a lawyer's office that smelled like paper and cold coffee. The attorney slid the documents across the table. "Once you sign, this is permanent. The Maple Street property transfers to Ivy Scott. The college fund is in Mia's name only. No clawbacks, no conditions." Dad's hand shook as he picked up the pen. For a second, I thought he might back out, but then he signed the house away with the same hand he'd used to point us to the door 3 years earlier. Mom signed the college fund papers. When she set the pen down, she didn't look victorious. She looked hollow. Ivy didn't say thank you. She just nodded once. "This isn't a gift," she said. "This is you finally paying for what you did, to us and to her." After the papers were signed and filed, Ivy finally spoke again. "You can see her," she said quietly. "Once. Here. With us." Mom cried like someone had handed her back her soul. Dad just sagged in his chair, relief and shame fighting on his face. That evening, we let them come to the apartment. Not the Maple Street house. Ours. The place they'd decided wasn't good enough when it was the only thing standing between Ivy and the street. Mia peeked around my legs, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Mia," Ivy said gently. "This is Sandra. And this is David. They're people who hurt Mommy and Uncle Eddie very badly. And they're trying to say they're sorry now." Mom flinched at that, but she didn't argue. "Hi, Mia," she whispered. I'm really glad to meet you." When the visit was over, Mom held Mia's tiny hand like it was the last warm thing in the world. "I don't deserve this," she said. "You're right," Ivy said. "You don't. But my daughter deserves to know that the people who threw us away were wrong. That's the only reason you're here." A month later, we stood in the driveway of the Maple Street house while the movers brought in our boxes. Mia ran circles around the lawn like she'd been set loose in her own private park. "This used to be their kingdom," Ivy said, watching her daughter race up the perfect front steps. "They cared more about this house than about us." "Now it's Mia's," I said. "They just rented it for a few decades." Across the street, Mrs. Henderson pretended not to stare, but I saw the way her eyes widened when she realized who we were. The story they'd told about us, reckless daughter, ungrateful son, didn't fit anymore. The town would talk. This time, the gossip would land where it belonged. Dad came by once after we moved in, standing on the sidewalk like a visitor at a museum. He didn't step onto the grass. Maybe he finally understood it wasn't his anymore. "You look good here," he said. "Like you belong." "We always did," I answered. "You were just too busy worrying about the neighbors to see it." He nodded, eyes wet. "I know I don't deserve another chance." "You don't," I said. "But Mia might choose to give you one someday. That's between her and you, not me." I closed the door gently. not slamming it like he once had. Through the window, I watched him walk back to his car, a 10-year-old sedan now, not the luxury vehicle he used to park so carefully in this same driveway. He'd drive back to wherever he and Mom were living now, probably a rental, somewhere small, somewhere nobody whispered their names with respect.